All right, guys. Well, here we are. It is, I don't know. It's like 2 a.m. now. What happened since I've last seen you when I was doing the monologue before is I talked to Danny, who's on the sponsored tier. He's on the $100 tier. He won a raffle 6 months ago or so. I don't even know. It was a long ass time ago. And I said that I'd come see him. Because that was like, I was like, okay, like, you know, there's not that many people on the sponsored tier. I should do a little raffle where I draw names and then whoever wins, I come see. And yeah, you can butt fuck me. Hey, you've been on the $100 tier for 9 months, $900 for a butt fucking bargain. No, I just, you know, I think it's cool that I get to meet people. And eventually, I promise this, I'm a loyal person. Eventually, we will have Patreon events where, like, we try to get everybody together at the same place, have parties and shit. Get dudes to dance with, like, a thong on. I'll be like, gross. I'm not looking at that. I can't believe I just paid that guy, like, $300 to be here for 30 minutes. It's just for entertainment. It's not fun. It's hilarious. Yeah. Oh, you have meth? Let's pay for another hour, you know? But I think we should have some sort of, events where we all meet up. I think that would be cool. But first, before that, the sponsors, they're all invited to the premiere of my documentary, the public one, whenever that happens. And they're all going to be characters in my Mickey Avalon book. You know, these are people that support me at the top level. All the sponsors have my phone number. And, I try to do what I can to make that worth the support because that helps put food on the table for my kids. And I'm very appreciative of it. I don't want to do too long of a monologue because this story gets so fucking crazy. And then what's really cool about this particular storyline, the origins, which I'm pretty much kind of made like a self-commitment where I'm never going to put it on YouTube. But I think I will put the Henry story on YouTube. Remember Henry, the guy that I bumped, like he was like the refry king of the Riviera Park, and then like his family may have not died, but like he was just some weird tweaker shit. But what's really crazy is this storyline that I'm doing right now is gonna collide with that whole thing. Remember I was down in Orange County? You're probably like, I don't even remember that. I'm going to come back to that after I'm done with the origin series, finish that up. Then I'm going to do Shaky Jake. And then I got some other stuff. I think I'm going to do a rehab series. Definitely would like to do more psychedelics. We're like halfway through Wasting Talent. Do more of that. Sex Files, Beat Off Bandit Chronicles. That's another $20 tier story. And then The Illustrious Parting with Celebrities for the $100 tier. All right, let's get into the story. It's hard for me to do videos in the condition that I'm in right now. I'll be cool and then I'll like have a memory about my mom and then I just start tripping the fuck out. And I've been smoking weed again lately and I swear to God, weed has always turned on me. It helps me with PTSD and it helps prevent night terrors. I never smoke in the day ever. Sometimes when I know that I'm going to work out hard, I'll smoke a bowl because it's weird. That actually makes you go way harder because you start thinking about yourself. You're like, damn, a few more reps and I'll just go from just hot and tan to fucking sizzling fire hot sex. Can you not say stuff like that out loud? It's fucking embarrassing. Your dick stinks too. All right, let's get into the story. This is an interesting one. So last time where we had left off, I'm going down to Orange County because I went down there with Stacy, the blowjob queen of Santa Barbara, and I run into Allison, which is like some AA celebrity, but she like extorts her sponsees. She's like, hey, we have to do step work. $70. What, you don't believe in God? And people are like, oh my God, I'm like 8 weeks sober. Okay, here. I stole my mom's money. And she was just a really evil person. I butt fucked her once. Then she was supposed to make me a dinner, and I didn't show up. And she forever held that against me and went around telling everybody that I was a womanizing piece of shit, and that I was only cared about myself. And she never said anything about me having a small dick. Thank God, you know, because I think she was one of those women that I found this a lot. And it's interesting because it's the kind of shit that happens when you're a kid, right? When you're a kid and you like someone, you're mean to them, you know? You're like, yeah, I just scooped shit out of my own asshole and I want you to smell it because I don't like you at all. And if you think I like you, smell my hand, stupid girl. But then, like, you go home and write in your diary and you're like, oh. Courtney looked at me today. And that look made going to school completely worth it. And I used to be like that, you know. I don't know if every guy is. I mean, I don't have conversations like that with friends because they've been to prison. They'd stab me if I said shit like that. But I was a pretty soft guy throughout my life, and I always had crushes on women. And that's how it would be, you know. It'd be like I'd be so enthralled by a girl that just, she looked at me the right way in school. Like, I'd go home and, like, throw on some Sinatra and start, like, strutting and shit in front of my mirror. And my mom would be like, are you on pot? I'm like, yeah. Mom, I'm 7. But the answer is yes, I am. Oh, did you get it from the Hispanic cleaning lady? I'm like, God, Mom, that is racist. Don't say shit like that. My parents are so funny because they're old school Italians. They always say the most racist shit. And I'm like, you can't say stuff like that. And then my dad's a hardcore Democrat. And he's always like on this like racial equality shit all the time. But then he'll say like crazy off the wall. I'm just like, I'm confused. I don't know. I'm an independent. Oh, that's about as bad as being bisexual. And I'm like, wait a sec. Dad, I thought you're liberal. I thought you were down for gay rights. He's like, only lesbians. I'm like, okay. Way to go, man. No, he's freaking out. I haven't gotten my vaccine yet, and he's I'm getting like, he's like sending me like text message photos of like blood droplets. He's like, you will disintegrate into this if you do not get vaccinated. I'm like, Dad, I'll get the goddamn vaccine. But like, Jesus Christ, man, whatever happened to pro-choice? I thought like I could shoot. No, not in this. Pro-choice in anything but this. No choice. You have no rights. I'm coming over. I'm like, no, don't. All right, I'll get it. I'll get the vaccine. So anyway, this girl, Stacy, I left her in the goddamn wolf den. You know, I left her with somebody that I know is a rapist. And Allison's a sociopath. She made up all this shit about me. So I was like freaking out. And honestly, I had no incentive except for possibly getting my dick sucked again. 2, no, by that point we were sleeping together because we both had herpes. I had no incentive to go save her other than I'm just a great guy. I am such a great guy. No, I tend to be like that. Like, I don't know. I have this thing where like, I totally feel responsible when I put women like Megan or Stacey in bad situations like that. And I want to go save the day. So anyway, you're going to trip out how this all comes together. So we go down to Ventura and I'm with Paya and dog. Hey, have I ever told you though that I used to work at this auto shop with the white boy? Hey, I swear to God, dog, he like fucking Limp Bizkit. All that shit you fools listen to. I'm like, I don't listen to Limp Bizkit. He's like, hey, I forgot what I was talking about, but white people are funny, huh? And, you know, he'd say stuff like that all the time. And then I was going to meet up with Tiny, and Tiny was this skinhead that I knew from Ventura. You know, and he was just like one of those like guys that lived with his parents his whole life, pathological liar, overweight skinhead, but superior. He's a druggie too. I'm like, okay, so wait a second. You're overweight. You're addicted to smoking meth, but you're superior only to other races. I never said I was superior to nothing but that. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, Tiny, cool. So basically they were these two buffoons, you know, loyal. And, you know, I always am one of those people that like appreciates loyalty, and I appreciate people that shoot me love, you know, but they were fucking idiots. And I would never say that to their face. So I hope this never gets released in any sort of mass way, but they were idiots. You know, they were. And I'm at that this Mexican restaurant in Ventura is like a sit-down spot. I go to the car to get my cigarettes to smoke. And this guy, some tall guy in like a Volcom shirt, comes up to me and fucking cracks me in the face. He cracks me a couple times, block it. But he got me like he got a sick one on my face. Fell down. He ended up wrestling with me, took my wallet. And after Paya came out, he's like, hey, dog, what the fuck? Hey, were you moshing again, dog? I'm like, look, I just got mugged. He's like, what the fuck, fool? Where was I? And then this car rolls up, and it's Darcy, the girl that I had group sex with. But that was definitely one of those moments in life where I was like by myself on the stairwell. I was like butt naked. They're like spraying this like lavender body mist on me. I'm like all like glistening. And I remember just thinking, I was like, damn, this is definitely one of those like really cool moments that nobody's ever going to believe, but who cares? I'm just going to savor it. And I ended up meeting up with her again years later. I met her the first time when I was like 19. I think I burned her when I was like 21, a couple years later. And I hadn't seen her since. And remember, I always made an effort to pay back people that I'd stolen from. I'm one of those people that makes momentary bad decisions, but I do have a heart and I have a conscience. Like if I cheat, I always feel guilty about it. When I burn people, I always feel bad, and then I try to pay them back. I've paid back a lot of people in my life. And there's been moments where I've, really thought that I was a bad person, like when I'm like doing like crazy, when I'm like pawning my grandparents' like antique stamp collection just because I want to get, an eighth of bud or something. But then I think about the fact that I have a lot of friends that I've had for 20 or 30 years. If you're a shitty person, you don't have that. A lot of people that I'm friends with will tell, like if you ask them, they'd be like, yeah, he's a great guy when he's sober. When he does drugs, he's not a great person, and I'm not. I'll just like commit random acts of violence. I'll be like, hey, dude, are you spun out right now? Yeah. Dude, let's go to the park and let's just go stab an elderly couple with a hunting knife. I've been up for a few days, bro. Nothing else excites me. And I don't do shit like that, but you know what I mean. I do bad stuff when I'm on drugs. So the problem with them stealing stealing my wallet like that, when I saw her, it took a minute for it to register. Does that ever happen? You see a face, it's familiar to you. You're like, wait a second. Were you in the Rambo remake? And they're like, oh my God. What did I call her? Darcy. It was Darcy, right? And I was like, wow. Yeah, I know where you live, asshole. And they sped off. Now, it was my parents' address, as I explained. My whole life, I've always put fake mailing addresses on my driver's license because I don't want cops to know I don't want anyone to know where I live. So, Pi's like, hey, you still want to go? You still want to go save the white bitch? I'm like, hell no, who cares about her? Whatever's going to happen's going to happen. That's fate, homeboy. We got to go save my parents now. He's like, dog, I'm fucking down for whatever you want to do, fool. I fucking like you a lot, fool. And I'm like, okay, stop. Don't say shit like that to me, bro. You're way bigger than me. Anything could happen. And I know that. I know I wouldn't be able to do nothing back. So just keep that attitude to yourself. So I end up bringing Paya and Tiny back to Santa Barbara. Remember, at the time, I'm driving an X5 BMW. I never got a gun from Tiny, by the way, because I don't think he had one. I forget what he had said, but it was like, yeah, man. No, I was taking it to get appraised. No, this is an antique gun. They only made 40 of them. It's worth about 75 grand. I'm thinking about selling it and getting some new tattoo work on my face. Just so I get pulled over a lot, Makes me feel alive. So I'm with these two morons, no gun, and we head to Santa Barbara. Now, try being with a hardcore Southsider and a hardcore skinhead in the same car and trying to pick out music. What do you guys want to listen to? Hey, this isn't some rap music, dog. I mean, I know I'm Mexican, but I like black shit, fool. You know, just to be completely honest with you, kinda. And Pi's like, oh, come on, man. I'm just trying to listen to some shit that talks about how black people music stinks. Hey, dog, don't talk about black people like that. And then, what do you mean, man? In the prison, you fucking hate black people too, man. This is some bullshit. And like, they're like literally arguing. I don't remember what the exact like context of the conversation was, but it was something ridiculous like that. These two guys just did not get along. And they're both big. It was the kind of thing where like if they headbutted each other, like the world would shake, you know, and they like wouldn't die. They'd probably be best friends afterwards. That'd be a good reality show. Tiny and Paya. So we end up getting to my parents' house, right? And I haven't heard anything from these people. No, nothing. And it was the kind of thing where I think intuitively I was like, okay, I burned this girl for $1,000, which isn't shit. Like, that's not a lot of money. That point in my life, I was like, pretty much like homeless, you know, just like couch surfing. I was living at Jeff's. I was dating that girl, the stripper girl out in Santa Maria. And I just didn't have a lot of money. But I mean, $1,000 for me back then would have been a lot of money, I think. I didn't have it. But I was thinking about how ridiculous it was that after all those years, she didn't even live in Ventura, or at least, actually, I really don't know where she lived, because when I met her in Florida, one of the reasons that I ever even talked to her in the first place is because she was from California, you know, and like when you're at a rehab like that, you tend to gravitate towards people from your home state. So I was really just like a very strange coincidence that this had happened. So we get to my parents' house, because I'm thinking, I don't know what I was thinking. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, if they did show up there, that, I don't know, maybe we could protect him. I started freaking out. I mean, anything when it involves my parents, I freak out, you know? I'm an only child, and they mean the world to me. So we end up getting there. These guys literally argue the whole time. And my parents, when you get to their house, there's like a stair walkway, and it goes up to their front door. When I was in high school and I used to get super shit-faced drunk, it'd be so hard to get up those stairs. There are multiple times where I would just pass out in the wall. I'd like make it halfway and I'd like hunch over. I had the respiratory system of like an 85-year-old guy. And I would just pass out because I couldn't take all the cardiovascular exertion. So we get up there, we're walking up the stairs, and I had to pee. Now, little known fact about me, I don't know if we've ever talked about this before. Karina thinks it's hilarious, but I have really poor bladder control. In fact, I like wet the bed until I was like 18. No, not that old, but I think like 9 or 10. I don't know, abnormally long. I was a bedwetter. Yeah, that checks out. You're a bitch now. It doesn't surprise me, Ryan. I remember a couple times when I was a kid, I'd go like spend the night at my friends' houses, and I'd like drink a Diet Sprite before bed, and the next morning, like I'd wake up and there'd just be this puddle in the sleeping bag, and I'd be like, oh my God. And I'd just start crying because I was such a little bitch. And then like my friend's parents would like come in and scoop the sleeping bag off the floor like it was like evidence. They'd like be wearing latex gloves. They'd go downstairs, and I'd just like be like on the stairwell like I was some like child of abuse or something. And I'd just like watch them talking about it. I felt like I was on some like really dramatic sitcom or something. And like the whole family's like, the Leone boy wet the bed again. It's 4 times in a month. Jeez. It's bad parenting. And I'd just be like, oh my, it was so embarrassing. I'm not joking about this. It was actually really sad. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. So, because I have poor bladder control, if I have to pee, I can't hold it. Like if I'm stuck in traffic, I always pee in a water bottle. Sometimes I forget about it, and they'll just be like golden piss and like water bottles like on the floor of my car, and Karina would be like, you are so fucking nasty. But this particular time, I walk up with these 2 buffoons, right? These two just big, giant dummies. My parents, my parents were used to it by that point, you know? It's like the kind of people that I would bring over there were so ridiculously trashy. You know, like, my mom would be like, "Hi, what's your name?" And someone would be like, "They call me fuckboy. I'm from Oxnard." And my mom would be like, "Hi, fuckboy." If you call her Mrs. Leone, she didn't even care what your name was. She just loves that. "Oh my God, I love when people call me that. I am Mrs. Leone." I don't know, she's really into that. So we get there and I have to pee. I can't hold it. I like ring the doorbell, and sometimes my parents take forever to open the door. And at that point, I didn't have a key to the door because I was kicked out of the house. And I was just like, want to hang out there for a little bit with these guys, make sure nobody showed up, kind of I could always be honest with my dad. He was always one of those dads where I could be very transparent, tell him what's going on. Like, "Hey, Dad, I burned some girl that I had group sex with at rehab. Yeah, I burned her for $1,000, and her and some random tall guy with the Volcom shirt showed up in a parking lot, beat me up, wrestled, bugged me. And now they have your address and they're threatening to come hurt you. So that's why I'm here with a skinhead and a Southsider. Oh, hey. Think I can borrow 50 or $60? Oh, no? Okay, cool. I'll just keep living like this then." So when we get up to the front door, I run off to go take a piss. I like run to the side of the house. Peeing, I'm like probably farting and yawning, doing whatever I'm doing, like peeing. And I come back and Pi's like, "Hey, dog, your mom gave me $40, fool." I'm like, "What do you mean? Where are they?" "I don't know." We showed up, and she looked at me. She's like, "Can I help you?" Like, "Yeah, we're here with your son." But Paya had such broken English. He's probably like, "Yeah, fucking those are fucking son." My mom probably was like so conditioned to me owing money to sketchy looking henchmen like that. She just gave him $40 and like closed the door in his face. My mom used to do shit like that all the time. And then so I go to ring the doorbell and they won't come back to the door. They're probably petrified. I'm like, "God damn it, dude. Why didn't you just wait? Or why didn't you, like a normal person, tell them what was going on? That I was peeing. They know I have a fucking bitch bladder." So now my parents like will not open the door. I'm calling them and shit. They're not picking up. I end up going to the back. I'm like looking through the way. It's all secure. It's like at that point, because I was like kind of zigzagging through being sober and not being sober, my parents definitely took like a lot of precautions and like made it impossible for me to get inside of their house. So I'm just like they literally scared my parents. My parents were probably in some like, bomb shelter that they had constructed somewhere. I don't know. My parents like really, I put them through so much. They have all sorts of, they have entire like closets that are like big ass vaults because I stole so much from them. I'm not proud of that. I'm just saying. And I'm like, wow, you got to be kidding me. Like we had gone all the way from Ventura. This is like 30 minutes back. And I'm there just to make sure they're all right. And goddamn Paya with the birthmark 805 tattoo on his face, like scared my mom and they won't answer. And they literally, I was like banging on the door. They were like getting more scared. My mom was probably like grabbing a 45 from her dresser. But the point is they never let us in. It was insane. So I didn't know what to do at that point, right? And, I'm like, "Let's just sit in the car." Tiny's like, "Hey, man, this is not what I signed up for, man. You said we were going to hang out with some tweaker bitches that might have been raped, man." I was like, "Yeah, what?" I mean, he's like, "I don't know, vulnerability. Guy like me, fucking as out of shape as I am. I can't get normal girls. I love girls like that." I was like, that's the kind of people I was hanging out with. Like, I'm not saying I support that way of thinking. I'm just letting you know that's literally like his whole intention with being with me. That in his sicko methed out mind, he thought that he'd be able to get these girls somehow because they were big. I just like spit something out. He'd be able to get them because they had just been victimized. Anyway, so we're in front of the house. He's all pissed off. They start bickering more. Like I was waiting for one of them to like take out some like sliver of a fucking locker or something and stab him in the neck. Like, these were the kind of guys that were straight up institutionalized and like so used to being in prison that, you know, they basically just, I don't know, still act like they're in there. You know, they don't function like normal people in society. So I'm tripping out at this point. Stacy and like down in Orange County, remember, Paya's on like a weekend pass or whatever. Like, I don't have him for that long. My girlfriend is coming there the next day. She has a pass too. All my friends are like in sober living and shit. So we didn't know what to do. And I'm thinking in the car, they're like sitting there like bickering, like, oh, yeah, dog, brown pride, fool. He like said it so that Tiny could hear. He's like, yeah, white power, man. Now, what do you think about that? That's what I think about your brown pride. Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah, dog? Well, fucking brown people, they're better than white people. And I was like, hey, can we stop with the racial undertones, guys? They're like, hey, shut up, fool. Don't use fucking words we don't understand. It's fucking low-key disrespectful, dog. And so it's like that kind of shit. I feel like I'm hanging out with 7-year-olds. I'm like, Jesus, this is bullshit. And I started thinking, I'm like, okay, let me focus on the issue at hand here. I got to get down to Orange County because I need, now it's driving me crazy. It's like I can't even get down there. But my parents, of course, always take, you know, they always take precedence over some girl that just gave me a blowjob a bunch of times and we had sex like twice. I was like, suddenly she's not important to me anymore. I still planned on like getting down there, but I don't want to go down there by myself. They're like these 2 gnarly biker guys, and who knows if they had weapons. Tweakers generally do because they're paranoid creatures. But now I'm tripping out because my parents are in danger. So I start thinking about ways to make money. You know, I'm like, how can I make $1,000 right now? Just in case they show up, you know, give them the money that I burned them for. Then they won't fuck with my family. Because I don't know what they were going to do. You know, in my mind, you assume the worst. I'm like, man, if I just ignore this, I might come back tomorrow. My whole house will be burned down. There'll just be some charred corpses like in the first Star Wars. I always thought that could happen. So I was really concerned about it. And so I start thinking about this key, right? Now let me explain. So I had a friend in high school that I've talked about before. We're not on good terms anymore. But he used to be he used to be a brother to me. He used to be one of my very best friends. And, you know, in fact, I talked about him in the storyline. It was Matty. Matty was the guy who, his parents were straight up, like, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. You know, like, one time I asked him, I'm like, why do your parents have so much money? He's like, yeah, my grandparents own Dallas. I'm like, the state? He's like, yeah, they own all of it. All the real estate there. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that that's not possible. And like, he'd go up to his mom. He'd be like, what does grandma do? She owns Texas. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I don't know. They were like these big time real estate people, you know, out of Texas. And my friend Matty's parents lived in Montecito, California. Place I've talked about before where Oprah Winfrey lives, and just a lot of like rich, like Michael Jordan lives there. Steve Martin lives there. Prince Harry and whatever the fuck, Meghan Markle or whatever. I don't know. They live there now. It's just a very, very, very high, you know, upscale place. It's the richest part of Santa Barbara. So his parents lived there, and I used to go hang out with him in high school all the time. Back then, he had an afro, and everybody called it a Jewfro, because he was Jewish. Even though it was weird. His last name was very Jewish, you know, it was like Motzenberg. You know, it wasn't that, but it sounded like something like that. And he would always talk shit about Jews. Like, even if it had nothing to do with Jews. But God damn it, man. fucking school's getting infested with Jews. I'm like, aren't you Jewish? He's like, not by choice, bro. Like, that's very odd, you know? He was an anti-Semitic Jewish guy. It was fucking weird. And I'd go over to his house in high school, and he got picked on a lot. You know, looking back, he was actually a guy, I mean, I got picked on too, I guess. The reason I got picked on is because all my friends were a lot older than me. So I was always like the little kid that they'd like make fight people and like do shit for attention. And he was a year older than me, but they picked on him because he had the Jewish afro. And I think they probably picked on him because he was a Jewish kid that like hated Jewish people. He'd like be carving swastikas into his binder and shit. I'm like, dude, I don't understand why you do that. You're Jewish. He's like, I'm making a fucking statement. Hopefully my parents un-Jew themselves. And I'm just like, weirdo. And so me and him spent a lot of time ditching school. He was like one of my like big, you know, school ditching friends. Now in high school, we weren't that good of friends. We just were both like kind of losers that would ditch school all the time. And I think I've talked about it before. In high school, I had a couple delusions. First of all, I thought that everybody ditched school all day, every day. Because all day, I would hang out with everybody. But see, what was going on is people would ditch like 1 or 2 classes and then go the rest of the day. But what I would do is ditch every class and just hang out with different groups of people. And I just never put it together that like other people went to all classes except for one. So I ditched like pretty much every class. Oh, that's weird. I turned out fucking great. And I'd go to his house, and his parents were weird. His dad was like a husky dude with a beard. He didn't look Jewish. He looked like, I don't know what he looked like, but he looked like a psychedelic Jew. If he was Jewish, there was some psychedelia for sure. He like wore like chong bandanas and shit. And he was just an old hippie that smoked pot every day, and he was grumpy as fuck, you know? And I'd be like, hey, how you doing, Mr. Motzenberg or whatever? And he'd be like, my goddamn child is a junkie. What do you think? He wasn't he didn't do heroin back then, but he was, you know, every drug in the book that we could get our hands on, he did. Now, with this kid, I had gotten really into acid with. Right? Like when I first did acid, I've talked about it on the psychedelic series, and there's like a ton. I did it so much, like, you know, you probably look at me as like a heroin addict with like I have a major in heroin and a minor in cocaine, but I think people really don't realize like how many psychedelic drugs that I've abused throughout my life. I love hallucinogenic drugs because I hated reality that much. I'm like, oh, I'll just hallucinate. And then I won't have to deal with my problems. I'll just hear them in sounds. It sounds like bubbles popping. Fuck those problems. This is so fun. And I just go down these deep, like crazy rabbit hole vortexes of hallucinogenic drugs. Now, one thing that he used to love to do was watch A Clockwork Orange. I don't know if you've seen that movie. Probably have. That was one of my favorite movies in high school. And my dad I remember I got suspended from school one time for getting in a fist fight. My dad's weird. He like yelled at me, and then he's like, I'm sorry for yelling at you. I bought you A Clockwork Orange on DVD. He's like, this is a good one. You'll like it. It was made by druggies. And I was like, okay. And I watched it, and it's a very weird dystopian film about a group of juvenile delinquents that go around beating and raping people, and then they drop LSD into people's eyeballs and then show them Nazi footage, and then they're supposed to be better, but the guy doesn't get redeemed. That's pretty much the movie. And then in a nutshell, there's a lot of really hardcore rape scenes in the movie, and they play like Mozart while like women are getting like gang raped. It's fucking gnarly stuff. I'm like, but like as a high school kid, I was like, this is artsy. This is exactly how I feel when I sleep. Everything about this, Mozart, sexual violence, ultra violence, LSD, this is cool. I think it was considered cool because it was so out there. So I'd go to his house and we'd watch Clockwork Orange like every time. Like Like, I'd go over there, I'd be like, hey man, what do you want to do? He's like, let's drop acid and watch Clockwork Orange. I'm like, okay, we do that every day. Let's do that. Yeah. And we'd watch it, and I'd watch this dude just watching the rape scenes, and he'd be like shaking violently and like breaking combs and shit. And I'm like, and I didn't realize it then, but it was because he had been sexually abused, and this triggered something. I don't know. It was weird. I don't know if, I was never, raped or anything like that, but if I had been, I think that I would have a problem watching stuff like that. I'm sure a lot of people that watch my stuff have endured some sort of sexual abuse, and I really am sorry. Nobody should have to go through that. But it was bizarre. It was a bizarre thing. He'd like sit there like this. He'd be like, hold on, the rape scene's coming up. I hate this shit. I hate it so much. Do you hate this? I'd be like, yeah, I hate it. He's like, yeah, me too, man. What about Jews? Do you hate Jews? I'm like, no, nope, I don't. I mean, no. Yeah. To be honest, I don't either. I would think you are Jewish, bro. You're weird. And then one day, he was the first. He was the very first person to get sent away out of all of our friends. And I remember it was a big deal. Like people would be like, where's Jufro? Someone's like, he got sent to an institution. I heard they might kill him if he doesn't change. They might euthanize him. And, my friends would argue. They'd be like, they don't do that. Yeah, they do. My dad told me they kill people that don't, get better. And so we had no idea what being sent away was. It was a mysterious thing. One day somebody's with us. The next day they're in an institution. And it was scary. And then it happened to Jesse, my best friend. And then it happened to me. And I look back, and that wasn't all bad. I had fun there. And then he got out, and he admitted that his uncle had raped him. And I felt bad for him. And I was actually very supportive of that. And I think that's why we actually became real friends at that point. He was different. He had a goatee, looked like Bruce Willis. He wore like wife beaters, and it was like, yeah, I was in an abandoned building last week. No, I got taken over by terrorists. Happens every fucking time I go to a Christmas party. I killed them all with my bare hands. A couple weapons. I'm like, okay, cool, Bruce. And he, I remember so I hooked him up with the girl, remember? I hooked him up with, I don't want to say her name. I know she definitely watches, and I don't want to say her name. But I hooked him up with this girl that I was good friends with, and they dated for like 8 years. And it was like one of those couples that when I was with Kate, hey, you sound like poo-poo daddy. This was like a couple that we would hang out with. It was like, both of us, like a group of us, me and her and Matty and his girlfriend. So one day, this is probably when I'm like 22, 22, 23. I don't remember how old, something like that. I was deep into heroin at the time and cocaine. And one day he called me and he's like, hey man. I was like, hey. It's like, I got really, really, really bad news right now. I was like, yeah? I was like thinking someone died or something. He's like, I just found a kilo of coke in my parents' dresser. I was like, how's that bad news? Let's do it. That's awesome. Fuck yeah, a kilo. That's what's up. So that's a righteous amount. And he was perplexed because his parents had gone so far out of the way to send him away to these institutions. They were very hard on him. And they didn't make money. They were just incredibly wealthy because of, his mom's parents, or maybe it was his dad's parents, whatever it was. So he ends up picking me up. And he's like, hey man, I have the yayo in the car. I was like, you brought a fucking kilo? He's like, look in the back, lift up the blanket. And I lift it up, and there's this fat brick. It's in but it's not like wrapped like the way that I'd seen it from like big drug dealers, where it would like have a scorpion stamp on it. It was like some perfect brick of cocaine. This was a brick that was in, fuck, dude. Preston's trying to call me. If it goes out right now, I'm going to be so pissed. It's been so hard just to sit down and do a video because I'm so, like, sad right now. But it was just, like, in a big Ziploc bag. So what ends up happening, I don't know if I've ever told this story before, but he was really upset and confused that his parents had a key of coke because of how they had always treated him. I mean, they sent him away for 3 years. I mean, he, like, did a term. He, like, came out with, like, a shaved head. He's like, you know, all that anti-Jewish stuff I used to say? I didn't mean none of it, man. And to be honest with you, I've always been really into Hebrew films. What? Hebrew films. Like, you mean Hebrew? I don't know what I mean, but yeah, whatever you're talking about, yeah, me too. He was just weird. So I'm in the car with him. We're driving around, and he's like, I don't know what to do with this cocaine. Should I bring it to the cops? I'm like, why would you do that? Get your parents. And this guy did cocaine. I did coke with him like 1,000 times in my life. I'm like, why would you bring it to the cops? He's like, for all the pain that those Jews inflicted. He had like a little like slip. He had like a little like lapse and shit. And he like hated Jewish people again, even though he's Jewish. For all the shit those Jews did to me. I was like, okay, weirdo. And I talked him out of that. I mean, that was, and I'm not joking, that was his first thing. Like, yeah, I should let the authorities know that my parents are coke dealers. I'm like, you don't even know. That could be personal. He's like, they don't do coke, bro. He said, my dad probably sells this. Yeah. They've got all these, like, menorahs and shit that are, like, you know, brass plated. Probably cost, you know, $60, $70 for one of those, man. What do you think he gets that kind of money? I'm like, they're millionaires. What the fuck are you talking about? He had really kind of gotten weird. So anyway, we're driving around and his dad calls him. And he's like, Matty? He's like, yeah. Tony Montana? He's like, I knew it. You've stolen from me, Matty. You've stolen cocaine from me, and you stole from me. I mean, that's stealing. I don't care if it's an illicit substance. You've stolen from me, Matty. He's like, I'm thinking about calling the cops. Ryan says I shouldn't. He's like, Matty, if you call the cops, you'll never see another dollar from us again. You might have to get a real job. And that scared him, obviously. So he's telling his dad, he's like, I'm not giving you the coke back. And I'm just saying, it's surreal to me because his parents had always been the narc type. You know, they were always the kind of parents that were incredibly hard on him and his friends especially. They were just like bitter old people. So they explained to him on the phone, I was listening to it, that they were addicted to coke. And they had been for like 25 years. You know, probably got addicted to it in the 80s. And Matty refused to give it to them. Now, at this point, we'd not done any of this coke. He was still with that girl that he'd been with for like 8 years. She cheated on him so many times. At one point, she fucked this dude that I know. He made a videotape of it, and he showed it to me. Now, he's like, this is like one of my best friends at the time. He's like, look, man, I fucked Matty's chick, and I filmed it. Check it out. And I was like, oh, God. I was like, damn, dude, Matty's got a hammer whammer on him. He's like, yeah, you think I can extort him? His parents are worth millions. And this guy, like, tried to extort him for this money. But anyway, it didn't work. He was still with that girl at that time. So after he had, like, decided that he wasn't gonna give it back to them, we pulled into this park. When you see the GoPro videos, you'll see the park. This is the place I was going to propose to Karina at, but I never did. We pulled in, and he opens up the bag. Now, the car already had the smell of coke. You could see, like, the smell of cocaine permeated the car already, because it's just especially when you have that much cocaine, it's very, very pungent. It's just a very strong odor. It smells like acetone or like nail polish remover, whatever. But when he opened the bag, it was overwhelming. It made my eyes water. It was like, it was like garlic or something. It was crazy. I remember just this waft of like, ether smell hit my nose. You could just tell that it was really good. Now, he took a little bit out with like an ID card. He opened the Ziploc bag, and I remember this cocaine just like, it was like in a brick form, but like he applied just a little bit of pressure with the card, and it just kind of like, it just kind of like imploded into like this smooth, glistening, flaky powder, fish scale shit. It made a line about that big. And I went to go do it. I did it before. I was the very first one to try this cocaine. And I swear, my face, like, up here just goes numb. Like, all this area right here. And I was like, dude, I think I'm having a stroke. He's like, oh my God, it's that dank. Let me do one. Like, I swear, he didn't even care. He just goes and he does one. He was like, oh, dog. I'm so high. And I was like, well, yeah, I know. I just dealt with that. It was the kind of cocaine where you snort a line and it gives you a bell ringer, And I think I may have told this story before, but what ends up happening is we pick up his girl, who is just I love this girl. She's like a good friend of mine. To this day, she is. She's got kids now and she's married and stuff, but she's cool as fuck. We pick her up and it's raining outside, torrential rain. And we end up just like, Matty's like, we're gonna snort all of this blow. Maybe we'll run a train on my girl too. I'm so high. I don't mean what I'm saying. And it started this very weird night where we're going around and we're like, have a CD case. It's pouring rain. And we're snorting coke all night, and we start getting really paranoid and really twacked out. We think we hear cars, and every time we think we hear a car, one of us will just be like, car. And all of us will kind of like look in unison to like where the light's coming. And we had this rule: if we saw a car, but we didn't get busted, we do another line. And I'm like, are you high? And he's like, I don't even feel it. I was like, yeah, no, me neither. You still want to run a train on your chick? He's like, yeah. Yeah. And I was like, all right. So we had this pretty wild night of doing blow. And I'm pretty sure I've told that story before. It goes on and on, but that's not really the point. I had to bring us back to the point at hand here. That kilo, this cocaine was so good. It was like the kind of thing where like usually you get shitty cocaine, split an 8-ball between like 3 or 4 people in a night. It's whatever. A gram would last us 3 of us a night. Like it was that strong. You only had to do little ass lines of it. And so his dad was pissed off. I mean, this blow was so good. A gram of blow right now, because of COVID especially, it's very hard to get cocaine into the country. Fentanyl, crystal meth, the stuff that you can make yourself is definitely becoming much more popular right now. Everyone's doing fentanyl now, and people are doing crystal meth a lot of times together. Cocaine's hard to get. Right now, a gram of cocaine in LA goes for $70. That's commercial grade, like mid-grade cocaine. A real gram of cocaine goes for about $200 to $300. The shitty stuff that like you can buy, like if you're at a nightclub, is like $70 a gram. The real cocaine's like $200 to $300 a gram. No bullshit. That's like the stuff movie stars snort or smoke. And the stuff that he had was the stuff that was like $300 a gram. So when that had happened, it was in the summer. I was selling drugs at the time, and we just made it a thing where we were just going hard with this blow. We were all snorting it. Eventually me and him got into smoking it, and then it all went bad. But at one point, after that first night when we were playing the car game, by that point we were smoking crack every day because this coke was so good. Like, it would come back, like, we just put a gram in a spoon and add a little bit of baking soda and start cooking it up, and it would like all cook up into rock, which is very, very unusual for cocaine. Usually you have to separate it. It makes these little like oil circles, and you get like a coin, and you're like stirring it up, and then it'll like, solidify on the coin. So this one night, me and him are driving around smoking crack. This is probably like, I don't know, a week or two after the first night, and we were on one. I mean, we probably smoked crack for like 8 or 9 hours straight, and crack psychosis compared to meth psychosis is much more intense and much more scary. So we're like up by this spot called the T-Bowls, which is my favorite place in Santa Barbara. It's this old skateboard spot that like vert skaters in the 80s would go skate at. And what it was the biggest mansion in Santa Barbara. It was like a fucking 600 room palace. Like, it was like some castle. It was gnarly. So big that it had its own reservoirs, because it like didn't even go off the normal water supply in Santa Barbara because it was that big of a place. And what happened is in the 80s, skaters found out, or like the 70s, skaters found out about it, put dynamite in these old reservoirs. It's all private property. And they blew up the reservoirs with dynamite, and then they got, cement concrete, and they'd make like bowls, half pipes, ramps, tag it up with graffiti. The whole T-Bowls is just covered in graffiti, right? I'll actually post a video on the $10 tier of up at the T-Bowl, so you can see this place. It's absolutely beautiful. It's like this like graffitied up skate park in the middle of the mountains in Santa Barbara. Really, it's a very coveted place. Like, you have to be a local to even know where it is, and even a lot of locals don't know about it. It's like a secret spot. It's my favorite place in Santa Barbara. And we're up there, that like we've been smoking crack for like 8 or 9 hours, and we got paranoid with the coke. His parents had been bugging him. They paid his cell phone, and that night, like in the middle of our little crack run, his phone got disconnected. Like, it didn't work anymore. And he's like, oh my God, I don't know what this means, but it's probably some Hebrew shit. I'm like, Hebrew, dude. Hebrew, not Hebrew. He's like, I hate words. I'm so high on crack. I was like, yeah, me too. And he's like, I think we should hide the coke, and I think I should hide the key. Not the kilo, the key where he had stolen it from. I guess his dad had this like, office that was attached to the house. It was like it was like a man cave, right? I guess that's what you would call it. It was a place where his dad would just smoke weed and be mad. He's like, I'm so stoned. I'm mad too. I'm mad and stoned. I'm gonna giggle. I'm mad. And that's all he would do. He'd sit on his fat fucking ass and smoke pot and be grumpy. But the whole reason that Matty had found that coke to begin with was because he had stolen a key to the study and gone snooping around looking for money. And he ended up finding a kilo of cocaine. So I don't remember what was left at that point. Like, it was only a week, 10 days after, that first night when we were playing the car game. And there's a significant amount of coke left at that point. I don't know. A kilo's 1,000 grams. There's probably like 890 grams left. I mean, he was selling it a little bit. We were doing it. He would never sell any to me, though. That was like his rule. He like wouldn't sell any to me. He's like, I don't know. I think he just wanted to hang out with me. So anyway, that night we're up at the T-Bowls. In the T-Bowls, you have to hop over a private fence to get into it. And then you have to walk for about 30 minutes. It's definitely like a place where a lot of my friends would take girls. We'd go trip up there. It's just a place so far out in the mountains that like nobody would fuck with you. It's scary at night too. I mean, it's private property. If you get caught up there, you get arrested. But we decided to go hide the coke there and the key to the study. We go up there, and I mean, that place is so big. There was these 3 reservoirs. There was like these cement, like, I don't know, like buildings that, you know, there was the property. It was like a 600-room castle. It was so big that it had like private amphitheaters outside with like jesters, like in the Great Depression when everybody was like in breadlines and shit, that like chain like funny people to like the stage and they're like, go on, entertain me. They had like entertainment slaves. I bet if I was around in the Great Depression, they probably would have had, do palabra. We'll loosen the chains up. I'm like, all right, palabra. Oh, yeah, that's fucking funny. Loosen the chains. Loosen the chains. And he'll do it again. You'll do it again, right? Oh, yeah, palabra, palabra. Oh. That's what would happen to me. Anyway, we find this landmark that, so there's like 3 bowls up there. It was the second bowl, so it was the middle one. And we found this like tree that had all this graffiti on it. And we had a flashlight, right? They didn't have phones on flashlights back then. We had like an old school flashlight that he had in his car. We dig up a hole, pretty shallow, right? I mean, like a normal person wouldn't know that it's there if they didn't know to be looking for it, but it was easy enough where we could retrieve it again. We you know, kind of like start digging this hole with our bare hands, all cracked out. Of course, we kept some. But the most, I'd say like over 850 grams, whatever it was, we left there, and he put the key to his study. So about a week after that, 2 weeks after that, what had happened to him? Oh yeah, so at that time, he was working for this veterinarian clinic up in, you know, he worked for like an animal hospital. And they have ketamine there, like in big, insane quantities. Like you can get like pounds of ketamine powder, and then, or this liquid. It's like in vials and shit, but it would make pounds. You put the liquid on like ceramic plates, put it in the microwave, and then it would powderize. And ketamine's really popular. It's really popular to this day. I have a lot of friends that inject it all the time. I don't like ketamine, but my friend Matty was addicted to heroin at the time. Now he had all this blow, but he left it up there with me that time, and he ends up catching a case for doing an armed robbery or a commercial burglary at this veterinarian clinic. He goes in there one night. There's cameras at this place, and he goes in there and just steals every single fucking vial of ketamine that's there. He had been doing it like one at a time, but like one night he stole the keys, he goes back in there, he steals thousands and thousands of dollars worth of ketamine. It's on camera. He ends up catching a case for commercial burglary, and he goes to jail. And this was like maybe a week or 2 after we had buried the whatever amount of cocaine was left in the key to his dad's study. So when he was in jail, like I was addicted to drugs at that point. You know, I was selling them. You know, by this point I was selling them. But still, that's a lot of coke. And this coke was like, you couldn't, I couldn't get coke that good. This was the best cocaine I'd ever done in my life. So once he went to jail, I decided to go up there with Jenny to see, you know, if it was still there. Now, I said that, you know, me and Kate, hey, Poopagatti, we would hang out with him, with Matty and his girlfriend, but they dated for 8 years. So, you know, by this point I was dating Jenny, and they were like at the tail end of their relationship. So I ended up going up there with her. We go up there in the day, not at night. And I go to the tree, and I start, you know, I see that there's like dirt right there that had been like dug up or whatever, but had been patted back down. I couldn't tell if it was still from the time we were up there before, or if he had gone up and gotten it and just put the dirt back where it came from or whatever in the hole. So we start digging. We had brought like shovels and shit. I had like this little survival kit thing that I like took from my parents. I was like, you don't need this. If there's an earthquake, you know that you don't have it in you. You fucking call your housekeeper and be like, hey, can you come make me tamales? You're not gonna like do survival kit shit. I can't see you doing anything like this. My dad's like, okay, but just leave the compass. You know, I want to at least know which direction that, you know, we could die in. So I start digging and I find the coke and I find the key. Now, for whatever reason, I don't know, like, I've always been one of those people that has kind of spotty morals or whatever. I remember thinking at the time, like, very self-righteously, I was like, okay, I'm going to steal this blow, but I ain't taking the house key. You know, I'm going to leave that up here for him to find. How stupid of me to think that, because, like, obviously when he goes up there and realizes the coke is gone, but the key's still there, it's, like, obvious that I did it. Who else would do that? Nobody else would even know what that is. So we took it, and in my mind, I was like, all right, when he asks me, I'm just going to be 100 with him. Yeah, man, I took it. I have a drug problem. I'll pay you back, man. My word's just as good as cash. But I never admitted it to him. I took that kilo, and this is during that period that I was smoking 600 hours worth of crack a day, and I smoked all of it, right? Smoked all of it. It was the best coke I've ever done. I smoked all of it in like a month or something, whatever it was. So he ends up hitting me up for it, right? Maybe like a couple months out. I mean, it'd been a long ass time. And he hits me up. So I remember he calls me and he's like, hey man, I know you stole the coke and the key. I was like, well, how do you know that? Nobody else knew where it was. And I went up there and there was nothing there. No coke, no house key. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, all right, this is the perfect opportunity to come clean with him. And I wanted to. I had like imagined in my mind like what it would sound like to say those vowels. But I was just like, no, I didn't do that. Hey man, I gotta go. I got another call coming in. And I never admitted it to him. Now, he kept harassing me about it. And he's like, dude, I don't even care about the coke, but I need to get in that study. There's other valuable stuff in there. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I denied this shit, denied it. We had a falling out because we got in a fist fight because he let me use his Blockbuster video rental like card, and I like never returned the video, and he like had to pay like, I don't know, $100 in late fees or something. He was super pissed off, like fucked his credit up or whatever. And we got in a fist fight, and then we weren't talking anymore. So anyway, fast forward to the next time that I go up there, I'm with Paul. We go up there to skate. This is probably, I don't know, some years later, right? This is probably 2015. Like, I'd already relapsed. I mean, we're talking years later. Like it was probably 2007 or 8 when I stole that coke and then never admitted it. And then all these years had passed, and I'm up there with Paul. I'm probably like 28 or 29 at the time, and I was like 22 when we first buried that shit. Me and him are skating, and I don't even think I'd been up there since then, since the time that I went up there with Jenny and dug it up or whatever. Maybe a couple times. I think I went there with Casey, like right when I was like sober. We went up there and went hiking or whatever. But I'm up there with Paul. We're skating, and Paul was a really good skater, and he's doing a bunch of crazy shit up there. And we're leaving, and I'm telling him the story about the coke and the key and everything, and how, like, I mean, Matty and I were good friends at that point again. I eventually admitted it to him, you know, that I took the coke, and he was more mad about the key because he never found it. And I was like, I left the key. He's like, isn't that pretty stupid? Isn't that the kind of thing where, like, I'd know that it was you specifically? I was like, yeah, I thought of that. Yeah, it was me specifically. I'm sorry, I'm a piece of shit. But he didn't care. He was sober at that point. He was over it. But I'm with Paul telling him the story, and Paul was always the kind of guy that, like, liked adventures and stuff. He's like, let's find the key. And we end up going and like looking in the same area. It's been years since. We're like digging around. We don't find anything. He's digging a little bit more, and he finds this like old ass Ziploc weathered bag. The key was there. He fucking found it. Paul found it. It was crazy. It'd been like years. He's like, I found it. I was like, isn't that gratifying? He was like, no. He's like, where does it go? I was like, to this dude's study, and I guess there's more valuable stuff. But me and, you know, I think I was like freshly relapsed. I don't know. I wasn't relapsed enough where I was like, even want anything to do with it, including even giving it back to Matty. We ended up like putting it back in this hole, and that was that. And that was in 2015. So now I'm in this situation where I'm with Paya and I'm with Tiny, and I just found this girl that I was in rehab with, or she just found me, I should say, and they took my wallet because I had burned her. And she's like, now we know where you live. And I'm like sitting in the car thinking of ways that I can get money. Now at this point, Matty and I had gone through another falling out. I don't even remember what the deal was at that point. Oh yeah. He had a kid, right? So now he had a kid. You know, he had that kid with that girl that I was talking about, that he had gotten pregnant, all that shit that had gone down. And the one where he got the domestic violence, but she hit him and he didn't do anything. And I was staying at his house one day, and he found a rig in his kid's bath, like in the bathtub toys. It's like rubber duckies, and then there's just this insulin syringe. And of course he blames it on me, the junkie, with this huge falling out. And I didn't do that. Years later, he found out that it was this other girl that we knew that had left the rig. It had nothing to do with me. She wasn't even there at the same time as me. And at that point, we got in this really big falling out because I was like, what, you don't trust me? He's like, hell no, you're like the biggest dope fiend I know. I don't trust you. And we got in a fight and we weren't talking. So now I'm sitting in my car and I'm thinking about the key. And I'm thinking about the fact that he had always said that his parents had valuable stuff in there. And these people were worth a lot of money. Like Tiny and Pyre, like arguing. No, dog, you don't even know how to spell white power. I know how to spell brown pride. I swear to God, fool, you want to hear me spell? He said, no, man. I don't want to hear you say nothing, bro. You're a fucking illegal immigrant. My dad said that you guys are the reason that we don't have a Lamborghini because you get all the work. He's like, that's the stupidest shit I've ever seen. You don't even know. You don't even have a dad, fool. Nobody has dads. Fuck you, fool. I was like, gentlemen, let me tell you guys about this house key that I know. And my friends are millionaires. And we should go to their house and we should jack them just so that we have some extra spending cash and so that I can get some money so possibly I can pay these people back. And then my parents aren't going to be at risk anymore. But I was like, go on. And so I started telling him the story and about where this key is. And I knew where the key is. Paul and I had just been there, I don't know, maybe a year before this is when he had found it. So now our plan is to go up to the T-Bowls, dig it up, and go literally, I'm with these two. I think the fact that I was with like two just like crazy career criminals just made me think crazy career criminal shit. And it says nothing, it had nothing to do with, like, at this point, this weird string of coincidences where this girl that I've like seriously hung out with twice in my life. Well, if you count rehab, I mean, I saw her every day there, but you know, the group sex thing, and then the time when I burned her for the pound of mushrooms. And then I just happened to get mugged by like her tall boyfriend in Ventura of all places. And because I was with these two guys that were literally down for anything, I knew, I was like, all right, these guys are down to commit violence. They don't like each other. They've been bickering the whole time. They scared my parents to the point where they won't even come out of their house right now. This is a perfect time to go up to the T-Bowls, get the house key, and go break into the study and see what we can get. Because Matty was really adamant that there was some valuable shit in there, but we had no idea what it was. And we would get back into the Origin series in the next installment of the Origin series. And believe me, guys, I am not in a good mood. I'm sad. That took a lot of effort. I don't even know how the quality was of that video, but the story does get better. I think there's probably like one, maybe two more in the origin series. It all will come together clean at the end of it. But for right now, that was our plan. Go up to the T-Bulls, get the house key, and go break into Matty's parents' house and see what we can get.